bobbing when the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing when the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing along.
Hello and welcome to the latest Red Robin Podcast Weekly with me, Chris Johnson, which is of course powered by Budget Ties Auto Centre and 360 Chartered Accountants. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Mikey Carter from 𝐂𝐿𝐼𝐻 and fellow Rover supporter Joe Withers, who is making his Red Robin podcast debut. In this week's episode, we look back at the Robins' disappointing 42 points 8 home defeat at the hands of the Super League leaders St Helens. We make our predictions on who might line up for Rovers on our troublesome right edge, now that the club has confirmed that Brad Takairangi will be stood down from first team action for the foreseeable future. And Robert Parkinson from Salford podcast Devil in the Detail joins us to help preview our upcoming Super League Round 5 fixture against the Salford Red Devils at the 𝐂𝐿𝐼𝐻 Stadium on Friday night. Good evening, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Evening. Yeah, not so bad, thanks.
Joe, I'll come to you first, Joe. It's first time on the podcast, mate. Just tell us about how long you've been supporting Rovers and tell us a little bit about what your hopes was for this season with Hull Kingston Rovers.
Been supporting them for, I think it's 20 years now. Still remember my first game. It was cold, snowing. It was when, I don't know if you remember, we played Leigh and the floodlights went out at half time. And the game got abandoned, and then we the return fixture, when it got rearranged, we ended up beating them, and I think a few Leigh fans still haven't forgiven us for that. So,
Joe, yeah, that was your first game.
That was
what
my
made
first
you come
game. Back? I don't really know, to be fair. I must be a glutton for punishment. So I think that's about 20 years now. So, yeah. This season, I was hoping for a bit more consistency, really. Hopefully push better than last year, but obviously start hasn't really gone to plan, has it?
No, it hasn't. Obviously 3 defeats and 1 victory. Mikey, obviously people be familiar with you, hopefully, with the work you do with 𝐂𝐿𝐼𝐻 and of course the Heritage Trust. You've been down at every home game so far at Craven Street, showing off your shirt collection. How's that been going?
Yeah, it's been going quite well, Chris. We've had some really good interaction and communication going on with some people down there. The weather did its best against St Helens to try and put me off, but all we did was we raised the boot and we got the shirts on underneath there. So it was good to be able to still have those conversations. Can't complain one bad weather night.
And is there any shirts that are proving more popular than others?
Usually is the case with Rovers. It's the 1980s. So I always try and take one of them with me every week so that somebody's got a little bit to look at. Because, there's always interest in the newer shirts, but a lot of times it does always go back to the 80s, which, you can't blame people, really.
Yeah, I've seen them shirts on the mannequin. I'm surprised you haven't got them chained up because I bet they're quite hot property.
They probably are, but if somebody's daft enough to mess with me, they're definitely not daft enough to mess with Keith Pollard, so I'm all right.
Yeah, and I can't imagine there's much of a black market either. You'd be unless you're going to keep it for your own personal collection, you're not going to be able to resell it somewhere, are you?
No, this is it. You'd have to keep it very private.
Yeah, so we're going to go on to the St Helens game last Friday, which was played in pretty rubbish weather conditions. Before we go into the lineup and the match, what was your expectations going into that game, Joe?
I wasn't going in it expecting to win, but I thought we could have pushed them a lot. Well, I thought we'd have given them a good game, but as poor as we was, I think you've just got to look back and give Saints all the credit, to be honest. They're unbelievable, aren't they? The line speed for the full 80 minutes, I've never seen a team move up that long for 80 minutes like that. It was unreal. So, yeah, I thought it'd have been a lot closer, but got to give the Saints credit.
Yeah, definitely. And for anybody who is watching this, if you want to leave any comments or you want to tell us about how you thought Rovers performed, please leave your comments in the comment section and we'll read them out and we'll respond to them. Mikey, how about you? What was your hopes going into the game?
My hopes, quite simple, really. I just wanted a performance. I didn't expect to win. I didn't expect to necessarily even push them all the way, but just to perform. I think, we throw back to 2021. We lost 25-0 to Saints, which you look at that scoreline and you're thinking, well, it was all one-way traffic. But we put in a really good performance. They scored their points in very short bursts. So I did kind of expect us to just put up a bit of a better fight. I think a bad day at the office for us, that goes without saying, but I do think that because of how good the standard of the opposition was, made Rovers' performance look a lot worse than what it maybe would have been. If we'd have been playing any other team in Super League and we'd played like we did, we probably don't end up on as much of a hiding as we was due to the standard of St Helens on the evening.
Yeah, and that's probably, that's a really good point to make. And obviously the squad was hampered by a stomach bug that was going around, and also a number of players still being out injured. But we lined up like this. We had 𝐂𝐿𝐴𝐾𝐿, who was making his return to the first team. He lined up at fullback. Ryan Hall out left, partnered with 𝐁𝐮𝐝𝐿, Brad Takairangi at centre, and then Sam Wood on the right edge. Jordan Abdul and Mikey Lewis at halfback. 𝐂𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐵𝐵 lined up and started at prop. Matt Parcell was the starting hooker, and George King was the other prop. Dean Hadley, Frankie Holton were in the second row. And although the team sheet said Matty Staunton, it was actually Elliot Minchella who came out at the start of the game. Staunton lined up on the bench with Litton, Sims and Dagger. Just before we go into the match, obviously seeing Dagger line up on the bench, Mike, what was you thinking as soon as you saw him?
Somebody was carrying a knock, somebody maybe wasn't 100%. I feel like he was there for a reason. We know that he can cover various different positions. He was probably incredibly unlucky to be dropped, if you think about some of his performances that we've seen from him this year. So, yeah, he was there as cover, and rightly or wrongly, he was needed, wasn't he?
Yeah, and regardless of the performance, Joe, do you think it's a little bit disrespectful to Will Dagger that Tony Smith would rather put in a 75-80% fit 𝐂𝐿𝐴𝐾𝐿 and put Dagger on the bench than he would, put his confidence in Dagger and start him at fullback?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you look to, obviously, 𝐂𝐿 played, was it the second game of the season? He wasn't fit for the first, was he? Is it the second game he played? Was it? Anyway, when he played, I thought Rovers looked quite clunky, and I think we did again the weekend. I think when Dagger plays, he knows the calls better at the minute, so he charms into the line better, and I think we look better in attack when Dagger's playing at the minute. I'm sure it'll come with 𝐂𝐿 in time, but I think for the minute, while Dagger's playing well, why should you drop him just because of a big name? It's just, I don't think it's right personally, but...
Yeah, and we'll come on to that at the end. So it took just 2 minutes for St Helens to score, with Rovers providing some really poor defence, which results in 𝐁𝐿𝐴𝐾𝐿 powering over the try line after latching onto a pretty routine pass close to the line. Tommy Makinson scores a kick, and after just a few minutes, it's 6-0 to St Helens. And we then start to see 𝐂𝐿𝐴𝐾𝐿 hobbling, which is probably a sign of things to come. And that is before Brad Takairangi comes up with a bad error after he throws an impossible offload on tackle 1 after we've just been awarded 2 set restarts on the bounce. We see our first interchange of the game, with Corbin Sims replacing 𝐂𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐵𝐵, and then Conrad Hurrell is shown a yellow card for a very late hit on Jordan Abdul, which I think he does pretty well to get back up from. Matty Staunton replaces George King on minute 19 before Rovers chance their arm on what are pretty difficult weather conditions. And then finally, we start to see some attacking play from Rovers. Firstly, Ryan Hall is put into space on the left. He kicks ahead as the space is closed down, and then the ball hits the Saints player, and the ball goes into touch 30 minutes out from the Saints try line. Ryan Hall is then back in action, with the England man scoring his first try of the season after 𝐂𝐿𝐴𝐾𝐿 throws out a delightful cut pass. Ryan Hall is too powerful for the St Helens defence, with Hall getting the ball down over the try line before being bundled into touch. And it would have been very interesting to see what would have happened if that game was on TV with that try being scored. But nevertheless, it went in Rovers' favour. Jordan Abdul misses the kick after 25 minutes, and it's 6-4 to the Saints. Conrad Hurrell returns from his 10-minute layoff before Abdul then makes a crazy mistake. He throws a forward pass just 30 minutes out from his own touchline. And that error is, of course, punished when Rovers also gift a set restart, and on 28 minutes, we see Jack Welsby putting Tommy Makinson over in the court for an easy score. The resulting converted kick makes it 12-4 after 30 minutes, and even though the scoreline might not have reflected it, it definitely looked like it was going to be a long, long night for Hull Kingston Rovers. On the 34th minute, Lewis Dodd starts over the try line for his first try of the game. For him, after referee James Child shows Rovers no leeway whatsoever after giving repeat set restarts as the Robins try and slow the game down. And then on the 38th minute, the game looks done and dusted for Hull Kingston Rovers. Firstly, Mikey Lewis spots some space and attempts to chip over the Saints' defence when we're just 10 metres out from our own try line and on the first tackle. St Helens capitalise on a ball turnover in the subsequent set, with Dodds beating 𝐂𝐿 to get on the end of a Wellesby kick before Makinson scores a conversion, making the score 24 points to 4 in favour of the visitors at half-time. Mikey, I'll come to you. Did you feel the game was done and dusted at half-time?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the two errors, the one from Abdul and one from Lewis in the first half, which were duly punished by Saints pretty shortly after, they kind of took the wind out of our sails a little bit. We've been in games where we've gone quite far behind and then been able to sort of pull ourselves back into it, but not quite had enough. And I just didn't quite see that happening again on Friday.
And that's the point, isn't it, Joe? You can make errors against some teams and they go unpunished, but when you're playing a team like St Helens, you've got to be on the game. You've got to be on the money, from minute one. And unfortunately, in that first half, there was too many times where players were either trying to make things happen, or they were just making crazy decisions that you'd never see him do in a normal game. And that one from Mikey Lewis where he tries to chip over. I mean, as much as we want to see that attacking flair and we want to see him trying them things, there's a time and a place, isn't there?
Definitely. You just took the words out of my mouth. There's a time and a place. I mean, 10 metres out on your own line when was the score only 6 behind at that point, I think, weren't we? Yeah. It's just criminal. You're just gifting a team like Saints. You're just gifting them points, aren't you? Even like with the I didn't think the ref had an amazing game by that. Obviously, you can't blame the ref, but even just you're not helping yourselves by doing that. It's just like I said, just gifting him back errors. Even we're going to go on to Takairangi, aren't we? But Takairangi making stupid offloads in places and stuff as well. There's times and places, and I think you've got to earn the right to be able to play like that. And against a team like Saints, you're just going to end up on the back end of it. Yeah,
and Joel Hopper says, I thought we were still in the game after half an hour, and it was a mad 10 minutes before half time that killed us. Do you think that was the case, Mikey, or do you think there was a pattern? Those patterns of play in that first half that just showed that we weren't really at the races.
There was patterns, but I can understand what Joel's saying there. It was that 10 minutes was the nail in the coffin, if that makes sense. So early in the game, you just can't allow a team like St Helens to score that many points. You look at the games that they'll win, and they'll win loads of games this year, scoring loads. Is the goal difference over 100 already? Sorry, the points.
Yeah,
over 100 after 4 games, which is just ridiculous. So you've got to defend well against a team like St Helens to be able to win, because the chances are, if you're going to beat Saints, there's going to be less than 20 points in the game, and you're going to have to score 2 converted tries to win it.
Yeah, that's right. And the second half starts pretty much the same as the first. 𝐂𝐴𝐷𝐾 cuts back in on the angle and helps himself to a second try before Lachlan 𝐂𝐿 is replaced by Will Dagger, and then to compound the misery, 𝐁𝐿𝐼𝐻 is sin bin for descent. Saints use a numerical advantage to score through Makinson, and then prop Alex Walmsley helps himself to a try in the 62nd minute after getting on the end of a Johnny Lomax punt. Man of the match, Frankie Holton helps himself to a well-deserved try with just 7 minutes remaining after Ryan Hall pats the ball to Sean Kenny-Dowell, who then offloads to Frankie. But the scoring isn't finished, and fullback Tommy Makinson completes his hat-trick after Will Dagger makes a huge error when he fails to deal with a kick into the dead ball area. That completes the scoring, with St Helens running out 42 points to 8 victors on a thoroughly depressing night at Craven Park. We've already spoke about how errors can compound the misery, and that Will Dagger one at the end, whether it was like a concentration or whatever it was, but that was pretty much how the night went for Rovers, wasn't it, Joe?
Summed it up, didn't it? Perfectly, exactly that. It just summed the night up. It was a night littered with errors, and just defend that right edge, just defensively. I don't know what it is. It don't matter. It doesn't seem to matter who plays there. It just don't work for some reason. Hopefully that'll change this week.
Is that fair, Mike? I mean, we saw last season we had Crooks out on the right, didn't we? We had all kinds of combinations on the right edge. you know, and we've pretty much started this season the same as we ended last season, haven't we? Where in defence, you know, consistently that right edge, whoever plays over there. And I think it's sometimes unfair to say it's just the centre and winger. I think the second row, I think Mikey Lewis, I think the whole line just doesn't seem to be working. And we're going to see another partnership out on that right edge. But if you look back on the tries and you look at the highlight reel, it doesn't look pretty on that right edge, does it, Mikey?
No, I think when you think back to last, I know we keep doing a lot of this, but when you look back to last season, the right edge was weak, but the left edge was that strong that we probably almost forced teams to go that way. So the way that we was playing on our left, if you're an opposition coach or player, you're almost targeting the opposite side because you're thinking we're going to struggle to go that way. And that's maybe where our downfalls come from. The left edge has been that strong that the right edge is sort of now having to take the flak for it. That's obviously carried over into this year. And as a fan base, we've maybe paid a little bit too much attention to that now. And we're highlighting it more and more week on week. We've not really had a massive amount of consistency. I'd hoped we had found that with Wood and Takairangi being in that partnership there. Obviously, the second row has kind of fluttered a little bit towards the start of this season. But yeah, we need to just find some consistency on that right side and just hope that we can sort of level it out a bit.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us tonight, Neil Jackson. He says sometimes we have to play boring rugby and it's learning when to do it. I think he has a point to a certain extent with the weather conditions, because the one very favourable, was they, for chucking the ball around, and we saw that with some of the errors that the players came up with. But is the case, Joe, that it's just not in our DNA to play safe rugby, that there's always going to be an element of risk, and unfortunately when you play a team like St Helens, we're going to be exposed when it doesn't come off?
Yeah, I think especially on Friday, if we like to use our edges, and I think if you watch Saints on Friday, their edge players shot up so fast that you couldn't get it to your edges, so you was having to play down the middle, and they're so strong down the middle, they just suffocate you. So I think on Friday that was the case, but I think against I say lesser teams, like the teams ideally we should be beating, I don't see the reason why we can't play that style of rugby. And even in these conditions, if you're a professional rugby player, surely you've got the skills and ability to be able to play it in that sort of conditions, you'd have thought.
Yeah, and hold that thought about teams that we should be beating, because I'm going to bring that up when we speak to Robert Gardner from the Salford podcast, and I'm going to pose him a similar question. But one thing that has been mentioned by a lot of people is the line speed from Saints, you know, the speed that they attack, but also, like you just mentioned there, Joe, the speed they defend. And Adam Wadford has made the point. He says, we've also in the first 4 games looked unfit and very slow with the ball compared to the opposition. You know, no doubt St Helens are a very fit team. You know, they play the game at a very fast speed. But Mikey, what have you made of our fitness levels over the past 4 games? Because I think there's been times where we have looked a bit sluggish and we haven't seemed to be, you know, hitting the heights that we'd expect. And this is on the back of many players having a full pre-season.
Yeah, I'd put it down to just a little bit of rust, really. But maybe I'm being a little bit too generous. I don't know. When you look at it, yeah, we probably have been a little bit slow. But did we as fans put too much expectation on the team as well? You know, are we asking the right questions? Are we asking too much? I don't know. It's a difficult one.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, isn't it? And we talked about in our season preview, the fans forum that we did, Mikey, about, you know, it's not necessarily about Hull Kingston Rovers, because a lot of the other teams have improved, you know, a great deal on last season. And you look at the recruitment from some teams, and we'll come on to that about Salford. You know, look at some of the players that they've brought in, and there's definitely an argument to say that the teams who we're competing with at the moment have strengthened really well, and the expectation levels around Hull Kingston Rovers may be a little bit unrealistic. I think what frustrates me and you know, it's probably just put a bit of doom and gloom around Craven Park at the moment, is that the performances haven't been there. So yeah, I think we'll accept defeats, but you know, you look at that Huddersfield game, you look at the Wigan game, you know, St Helens, and we just haven't seen the style of play that we used to. And you know, I asked you before we just came on air, Joe, do you think it's a case of we're just waiting for some better weather, and when we get a harder pitch and the sun shines out, we're going to see a different Hull Kingston Rovers?
Yeah, probably so. I mean, Tony Smith keeps mentioning it, doesn't he? When the weather gets better, we'll get better. But we're in England. We're in Hull. Does the weather? You're always going to get bad weather at times, and whether it's summer or not, that wind's always going to be blowing across the pitch. So you can't always say, "Oh, we'll be better." You've got to learn to play these conditions, and like I said before, they're professional rugby players. Have got to be able to play in these conditions. Otherwise, you're starting your season halfway through if you play summer rugby.
Yeah, and that's a really good point to make. And although it was a disappointing for Rovers, wasn't it? Man of the match, Frankie Holton, once again showed some of the supposedly bigger name players how to do it. How impressed was you, Mikey, with Frankie Holton's performance on Friday night?
Yeah, I don't think you can just limit it to Friday either. I just this season, not having a pre-season after picking up that niggle, missed the pre-season games, to kind of get thrown straight in against Wigan off the bench, and his tackle record, has he missed one tackle out of X amount he's made? Chris, I think you alluded to it before we went on air. We probably should be focusing on some more attacking prowess statistics rather than how many tackles a player has made. But I don't think you can take anything away from Frankie. And hopefully his form continues on Friday.
Yeah, definitely. And was there anybody else who stood out from you on Friday night, Joe?
I thought 𝐁𝐾𝐜𝐿 did quite well. I thought he was trying to get the team going at times, trying to think him. I thought Parcell was all right as well. I just think our forwards just didn't get a quick play of the ball to allow him and Jez to work off. And I think against Saints, you just got no chance.
Yeah, and you mentioned 𝐁𝐾𝐜𝐿 there. A couple of stats for you. 𝐁𝐾𝐜𝐿 made 14 carries. Ryan Hall made 15. Unfortunately, a lot of them carries were coming out of defence, wasn't they? And one thing that I've noticed about our left edge, and it's why probably 𝐁𝐾𝐜𝐿 and Ryan Hall got a little bit of criticism, is that we just don't seem to be getting the ball to them in the right areas, do we, Mikey? They seem to be starved of possession when in an attacking position.
Yeah, they've spent a lot more time probably with ball in hand in our own half than they have in the opposition so far, and that's down the wrong end of the pitch from what we'd like to be seeing them. That could come from the fact that we're maybe not getting the pack down, getting us downfield quick enough. We're maybe starting our sets in the wrong position. Maybe we're not making enough or resisting, the other team to less meters in their half as well, and we're starting each set on the back foot.
Yeah, and I think maybe one of the reasons we're not seeing them get the ball in attacking positions, and I'd love to get the opinion of people who are watching the stream now. So please comment if you've got something to say. But Jordan Abdul doesn't seem to have been hitting the heights of last season just yet, does he? Jod, obviously the England squad was announced last week. Jordan Abdul was nowhere to be seen in there. Whether he's going to be featuring for the England Knights is there's a question mark over there, but we definitely haven't seen the best of Jordan Abdul yet, have we? And he's definitely a player who can win a game on his own. What have you made of Jordan Abdul so far, Joe?
Not sure, to be fair. I just don't think we're using him as much as we did last season. I think a lot of the play last few weeks, obviously since the season started, has gone down Michael Lewis's side. I don't think he sometimes looks frustrated out on the field. I think like he's not getting enough ball when he's calling for it or not. But even so, he said it himself, he's always struggled with inconsistencies in his game. He always starts the season slow. So hopefully, give it a few more weeks, he might start hitting them straps again. But as I keep saying, the season started 4 weeks ago. You need to be on your ball straight away. Otherwise, you're playing catch up.
Yeah, and that's definitely the case, isn't it? And we're going to talk about the Salford game very soon. But, the more games you lose, the more important the next game becomes. And I still don't think we're in a situation yet where the next game's a must win. But it is important, isn't it, that we start to pick up results. At the moment, we're conceding on average 25 points a game. And if you're going to do well in Super League, Mikey, you just cannot afford to concede as many points as that every game, can you?
No, and it's no secret. It's no magic formula that nobody really knows of. It's defense wins games. You've got to score tries, but if you can just keep holding your defense, if you can limit the opposition to maybe one try a half, maybe two, you've got every chance of winning a game in the Super League. And it is just obviously much easier said than done.
Yeah, and Neil Jackson, he said, didn't he, about playing boring rugby. And I think for the first 10, 15 minutes at least, we need to be a bit more conservative in our approach. You know, we saw 𝐂𝐴TIA score 2 tries, one just after the start of the first half, and then the same again, start of the second half. And they're killers, aren't they? Because, you know, Tony Smith obviously has his taught the game plan that they talk about prior to the game. They're going to a huddle now, which is a new addition. You know, we've started going into a huddle, and obviously they're giving out the pre-match orders, and then to concede so early, it just almost flattens the place. And I do wonder if that is having an effect on the team, that these early points, what we're conceding, is knocking the confidence so much that it makes it easy for the opposition to almost get a roll on us. And I think against Salford, Joe, we're definitely going to have to come out the traps a lot faster than what we've done so far, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. I think we need to, like I say, that the coach can only do so much. As soon as they step over that whitewash, they need to be on it. And like I said, that they should be fired up in that huddle. Kenny Dowell should be firing them up. If they should be fired up already, but to go out and then to concede in the first minute, I mean, that's just a killer. You want to be like strong for the first 15, 20 minutes, keep them out, and then work your way into the game, and then you can try and post points yourself or earn the right to be on top. But gifting a team like Saints to try that early, you're setting the tone for the game, really.
Yeah, and Mikey, the only other positive that I could come up with from that game was that 𝐂𝐴TIA got a few more minutes under his belt. How have you viewed his performances so far?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed watching him play. You think back to last year and you think how we missed him and how well we played, and he didn't feature. And I really think that he can be a big player for us for the rest of this season and beyond. I think he's somebody who we almost want to be shaping a team around him. People talk about Mikey Lewis being sort of like the one, and it would be very difficult to argue against that. But 𝐂𝐴TIA is in that conversation. People like him, people like Matty Staunton. We've got a lot of young English lads who we've got a really good coach with them at the minute. And if he can continue bringing them on, I think that there's a really, really good, bright future for some of the young guns at our club.
Yeah. And then to compound the misery, Joe, Lachlan Coote hobbles off, doesn't he? We saw him hobbling in the first half, and then we see him go off, and Will Dagger comes on to replace him. For me, he's probably he's not looked fit. He definitely didn't look ready for that Wigan game. Do you think it's a case where he's been rushed back from injury too soon? And do you think we should have maybe utilised either Dewsbury maybe to get a game under his belt, or do you think that whenever he's fit, or whenever he's close to being fit, he should go straight into that first team?
Yeah, I think if Will Dagger won't performing, I think you've got to throw him in there. But the way Will Dagger's been playing, I don't see the risk. I think the way Dagger's playing, from what I've seen of Coote so far, I know he's been rusty because he hasn't played. He's had like intermittent games, but like Dagger's playing better. So why should you be dropped just because he, like I said before, is a big name, but it's just a name on paper, isn't it? You've got to go with who's in form, and the way Dagger's playing, it's a risk throwing someone in with an hamstring injury, and look what's happened. He's gone and done it again. So Dagger will play, and then hopefully, like I said, I think I was listening to Tony Smith's pre-match press conference. He said he could maybe be persuaded, or Coote would try and persuade him to play, but there's no need to risk him when Dagger's playing quite well. So there's no need for me.
Yeah, and he's not been named in the squad for Friday night. Another player who's not been named in the squad is, of course, Brad Takairangi. What we're going to do is we'll preview the Salford game next, and then we'll talk about Brad Takairangi towards the end of the podcast. Of course, Rovers travel across to the AJ Bell Stadium on Friday night to take on Salford Red Devils side. It's a 7:45 p.m. kickoff. The game's not being televised, so if you do want to watch it, the only way you can do it is by travelling over down the M62 on a Friday night, a journey that many of the Red Army will be familiar with. And to help us preview the game, I'm delighted to be joined by Robert Parkinson, who's from the Devil in the Detail podcast.
All right, boys.
Hi, Robert. How are you doing? We'll just give you a nice introduction. Of course, Rovers travel over to Salford on Friday night. But before we talk about that game, obviously there's a changeover in the coaching set up at Salford in the pre-season. Paul Rowley came in. There was also a big turnover in players. Just tell us a little bit about how Paul has been doing and how the squad's shaping up at the moment.
Yeah, obviously Paul Rowley came in for Richard Marshall. We've obviously had dealings with Paul Rowley before when he was at Lee and he was at Toronto, and them teams were quite aggressive, and I personally was kind of worried that we'd be, down in games to 12 men, 11 men. But since he's come in, totally different to what I thought it was going to be. He's produced a team that likes to throw the ball about, likes to score tries, and it really is, when it does click, it's a joy to watch. There's a lot to go. Season's just started, but obviously we've won 2, lost 2, and we're ready for the next challenge come Friday.
Yeah, and you obviously started off the season with a tremendous win at Castleford, didn't you? And then you follow that up with a 38-12 victory over Toulouse. You've then played 2 away games, 48-16 defeat at the hands of our nearest rivals, and then a 34-2 defeat against Ian Watson's Huddersfield Giants. Is it being a case of sort of good and bad? Is it as simple as that, or have you seen enough in them first 2 victories to suggest that the defeats are more of a blip?
Yeah, the first 2 games, Cass was like an SAS job. It was in and out, really professional. Played some good rugby. Really mixed it up. Cass didn't really know how to deal with us, and it was a really good result. Then we took on Toulouse, like you said, at home in the middle of the 2 storms that came over Britain. Really ground out that result, which was great. And we were 2 from 2 at that point, and we were thinking, here we go. We go to Hull. Luke Gale was suspended, so we were thinking 3 from 3. Unfortunately, all went a bit pear-shaped at the Hull FC, and we had players sin-binned. Mark Sneed went in the bin for 10 minutes. They scored 3 tries in that period, and that saw the game out. And then last week against Huddersfield, I don't know whether you guys have played Huddersfield yet, but they're a really, really good side. Big squeeze, kick deep, and squeeze you. And we just were able to deal with that. We've got a very good set of backs, but they've got a massive set of forwards, and we just weren't able to stop the roll, unfortunately. But I've seen enough in them first 2 games to think that if we get decent ball and decent position, we'll score tries. And if when that's what good rugby teams do, they score tries, they win games.
Yeah, and we have been on the end of a Huddersfield defeat, and there's no doubt that Huddersfield are setting the stall out pretty strong this season, aren't they? And obviously, maybe it might not have been a bit too much of a shock to you after seeing what Ian Watson did with Salford, of course. He's had his season there now, hasn't he, where he's managed to get the house in order, and now he's got a few more signings in. But yeah, Huddersfield are definitely looking very strong this season. So the squads were announced early today for Friday's fixture. Rovers line up like this in the 21-man squad. We've got Sean Kenny-Dowell, Ryan Hall, Jordan Abdul, Albert Vette, Matt Parcell, George King, Dean Hadley, Kane Lynette, Matty Staunton, Jez Litton, Corbin Sims, Elliot Minchella, Jimmy Kinehorse returns, Will Dagger, Mikey Lewis, Rowan Milnes, Ethan Ryan, Sam Wood, Greg Richards, Tom Garrett and Frankie Holton. And the Salford squad is Ryan Brearley, Ken Seo, Tim Laffy, Joe Burgess, Brodie Croft, Mark Sneed, Aquala, Andy Ackers, Shane Wright, James Greenwood, Elijah Taylor, Danny Addy, King Vunny Yahweh, apologies for pronunciation, Ryan Lannon, Chris Atkin, Jack Ormonroyd, Rhys Williams, Matt Costello, Sam Luckley, Dean Cross and Alex Mellor. Missing from the Rovers squad is, of course, as we've already mentioned, Lachlan Coote and Brad Takairangi. It's too soon for Ben Crooks and Will Maher, and although they are back in training, and Tony Smith said that they won't be too far away. And then for the Salford squad, Sam Luckley replaces former Robin Greg Burke, and it's a squad that features 6 former Robins, of course, Ryan Brearley, Ken Seo, James Greenwood, Danny Addy, Ryan Lannon, and Chris Atkin have all lined up for the Robins. What do you make of the Salford squad first, Robert?
Yeah, Salford squad is very impressive. We've got speed in the back division, which is great. Obviously, against teams, you need to be able to outrun teams. Obviously, your halfbacks, the likes of Mark Sneyd and Brodie Croft, that's where the magic happens. Mark Sneyd, we all know what Mark Sneyd's all about. Super tactician. Brodie Croft is speed. He knows where the line is. Has he got speed of thought? That's the big question on my lips at the moment. But what I've seen so far, he has impressed me. 𝐂𝐾𝐫𝐼 was coming. I didn't really know what he was all about before he turned up at Salford, but he's been our biggest performer, I think, this season so far, as well as Shane Wright. I think he's very, 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 very good. He's come over from Australia, and Elijah Taylor, captain, fantastic, tackles everything that moves. And I think every good team has to have players like that to make a success of what they can achieve. This Salford team, a lot of 8 out of 10 players, and we've got that sprinkling of class as well. You say you've got, like, say, Ryan Braley used to play for yourselves. He's a class act on his day, a local supporter of Salford as well, which makes a massive difference because we're all behind him every week. And we're just kind of hoping, obviously, we can get back to winning ways after sort of 2 defeats, but not horrendous ones.
Yeah, and Mike, I'm going to come to you. Salford lined up like this against Huddersfield. They had Ryan Braley at fullback, Joe Burgess and Matty Costello, Dean Cross and 𝐁𝐿, and then they had Croft and Sneyd in the halfbacks. Greg Burke, Andy Ackers and 𝐂𝐾𝐫𝐼 were up front, and then Ryan Lannan, Shane Wright second row with Elijah Taylor at loose forward. Which are the names that strike a bit of fear into you at the moment, Mikey?
𝐁𝐿. Straight out there. I think he's going to line up against Ryan Hall. He's just got pace, he's got technique, he's got skill. We saw it for a couple of years. If we hadn't have got relegated, would he have stuck around at Rovers for a little bit longer? Quite possibly. But yeah, 𝐁𝐿 is one for me that definitely worries me. Mark Sneyd as well. Kicking game. Robert mentioned about him being a tactician. His kicking game, not just his conversions, but his kicks in play as well, scares the life out of me, I'll be honest.
Yeah, Robert, and he's a name, of course, we're very familiar with. We've seen what he can do. We're very close to what he has done in the past. How has he performed for Salford so far this season?
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's been brilliant. Obviously, he played for us before 2014. I think he left. He went to Castleford, but before then, he was okay. Since he's come back, he showed, like you say, that tactical nous. Castleford, he kicked at the right time, kicked into space, and that's what teams need. They need someone around the pitch who can get the team round and get the team into places that do damage to opposition, and that's what he does. He's not blessed with a massive amount of pace, but he's so sharp and so quick in his mind, and he got a fantastic kicking ability as well. I'll tell you also a player you got to watch out for as well is Tim Laffy. I've scored 3 tries in 2 games for Salford. It's coming under the radar. He'll be, if he's fit, he was out injured, I think, with a sort of a knee strain, I think, last week. But he's back in the squad this week, so he'll be a danger against you. And also, Dion Cross came in from Widnes last season, won their supporters player of the year. Pace to burn, came as a winger, but came in at cast in the centre, and he hasn't managed to lose his place since. Fantastic player. He gets ball, he'll score tries.
Yeah, and you've been great, Robert, at telling us where all your strengths are, but what about the weaknesses?
Weaknesses, for me, you think that maybe the forward pack isn't as big as I'd like it to be. We've got a great set of backs, but if your forwards aren't going forward, you can't strike teams. Yes, we've got 𝐂𝐾𝐫𝐼, who is a big forward, but the rest of the pack are grafters. They will run through walls for you, but they won't run over teams. And that's the difference. And that's the thing that really makes me think, can this Salford team get into that playoff spot and compete at the very top? Because the top teams have big forwards who can make meters. This team will run all day. It depends if they can run over the top of teams. That's how they deal with teams doing that to them, is how we will go this season.
Yeah, Joe, I'm going to bring you in. Obviously, Takairangi has been stood down. He won't be featuring, so we're going to have a new partnership out on that right edge. It could be, and I think a lot of fans are calling for it to be, Sam Wood partnering Ethan Ryan, with Ethan Ryan returning to first team action. Although I've heard some people suggest that Kane Lynette could line up at centre with Wood out on the wing, and even see a shift of Ryan Hall to centre, which I think would be completely nonsense. But it looks like that Sam Wood and Ethan Ryan might be that partnership. How do you expect them to go?
Yeah, I think it'll be good. I think Sam Wood's got all the skills to be a centre. I know that is his preferred position, but I think he's got all the skills that Takairangi could possibly bring anyway. So I don't. And the thought Takairangi was out of form before he got stood down, so I can't see Wood doing any worse at centre than Takairangi was doing anyway. And I think we saw when Ethan Ryan has played, he's very more than capable. I think if he was fit beginning of the season, he'd have started on the right wing anyway. And I don't see him losing his place when he gets into the team.
No, and I think if Ethan Ryan does play, one thing that he will definitely bring to the team is pace, isn't it? And I think we've been somewhat lacking in that. And I think Ryan Hall looks a yard slower, than what he did maybe last season. But if it is Sam Wood and Ethan Ryan playing, it looks like they'll line up Robert against Joe Burgess and Matty Costello. How they've been doing, and what could we expect from them?
Matty Costello, I call him 8 out of 10 Costello, never lets us down. He's got bigger names in front of him, but every time he gets an opportunity, he shines. And it's whether Paul Rowley continues with him in that centre position now that Tim Laffy is back. For me, I think he's certainly a player that we should be looking to play, but obviously I'm not the coach, and we'll have to see. That's what coaches do. They live and die by decisions and selections, don't they? So it is a big decision because we've got a lot of talent in that back division. That puts pressure on players as well, because they got to perform, because if they don't perform, they get shifted out, and that's the important thing. It's about producing performances and scoring tries.
Yeah, and it's always good to get an opinion from afar of how Hull Kingston Rovers are doing. Obviously, I've named the squad there. Which are the players that put a bit of fear into you, Robert, ahead of Friday night?
Well, obviously Ryan Hall, proven try scorer for throughout his career. If he gets ball, he'll score tries, won't he? So we've got to make sure that we keep him under wraps. It's all about supplying him. For me, obviously, didn't you say 𝐂𝐿𝐴𝐶 was out?
Yeah, 𝐂𝐿𝐴𝐶𝐿's out, and he'll be replaced by Will Dagger.
Right, so obviously 𝐂𝐿𝐴𝐶 would have been a major danger, but that's good, obviously, for us anyway, that he's out, not for you. But we'll have to wait and see. I suppose you'll bring a lot down to the AJ Bell on Friday. You'll roll the lads on, and it'll be a good game.
Yeah, and for me, I had a quick look at the betting odds before we came on, and the bookies have got us pretty much at evens. Even the handicap is at 0 with some bookies. So, obviously they can't call it. And for me, I think we look pretty even in the forwards. I think our wingers and fullback, you could argue on the night, are going to be pretty even. And I think it'll come down to a battle of the halfbacks. I think Jordan Abdul, Mikey Lewis versus Brodie Croft and Mark Sneyd. And would it be fair to say, Robert, that if Brodie Croft and Mark Sneyd play well, Salford play well, and if they don't have a good game, then there's not much else after that?
Well, yeah. Well, we have got talent other areas. But like I say, Mark Sneyd and Brodie Croft are the people who pull the levers, as it were. So if they have a good game, then obviously they'll get Salford going in the right direction, and that'll obviously do some damage on Friday night. But yeah, we're all looking forward to it down here in Salford. I'm sure it's going to be a great game. I do have a sort of bit of soft spot for Hull Kingston Rovers. I think they're a similar club to Salford. They play some good rugby. Fans are really passionate. And it's will be a great contest come Friday night.
Which is nice to hear, of course, because after that £1 million game, there seems to have been a bit of bad blood between the two sets of supporters, doesn't they? Although I think it's mostly played out over social media rather than actually in person. But Mikey,
I didn't want to mention that.
But
we have done.
Do you know what? It's just etched in our memories forever. I don't think we'll ever forget about it, although probably the less we talk about it, it'll probably be the better. But Mikey, we just talked about how disappointing we was against St Helens. If we are to get a result against Salford, where are we going to have to really improve on?
Halves. I think we look at this season, 4 games in, we've scored 11 tries. I think it's not enough to be winning games week in, week out. That yes, the pack are going to need to make some really, really good space for the Haas to be able to play off the back of that. But I think if we can get Lewis and Abdul playing with the form that they had last season, then that'll put us in good stead.
Yeah, and Joe, I'm just going to give you my lineup in the forwards and see if you agree on or if you'd change anyone. So I've gone George King and Matty Staunton starting props with Matty Parcell at hooker. Kane Lynette and Frankie Holton at second row with Elliot Minchella loose forward. And then on the bench, I've gone for Jez Litton, Corbin Sims, Albert Vette and Tom Garrett, of course. Hadley played against St Helens, but for me, I think he's the one who drops out, one of the forwards who drops out.
Yeah, I'd go with that as well, to be fair. I think Frankie Holton on that right edge, I think he'd give us some solidity down that side. I think he tackles everything, doesn't he? He's an absolute machine. Kane Lynette back, that's a big boost. I think we missed him last week. And Minchella just he like gels everything together, doesn't he? He's a ball player, he can run the ball, he tackles, he's what you want as a 13. He's like a Kevin Sinfield back in the day, and he can do everything. So yeah, I think I'd pretty much go with exactly the same as you.
Yeah, and Robert, I always put people on the spot, so I'm gonna ask you. Obviously, your predictions for the game. The bookies can't call it. Can you?
I'm going to go 19-18 Salford.
Oh yeah, well, there's only one player in the Mikey who's gonna score that drop goal.
Yeah, we've had some drop. I was looking at some stats this afternoon, and there's quite a bit of drop goal history, isn't there, between 𝐂𝐻𝐼 and Salford. There was the final game of the 2019 season, where it was Chris Naninu. Who kicked the drop goal. Luckily, at that point, we were safe because Wakefield had done the job on London. So yeah, and then obviously we had the £1 million game as well. So I think if you look at the Mark Schneid stats over the years, predominantly for Hull FC, he's kicked a lot of drop goals. If it's a close game, if it's going to happen, it'll happen, won't it? Let's face it. We just need to make sure it's not a close game.
Yeah. Hopefully, well, that's the hope, isn't it? That actually, drop goals almost irrelevant, isn't it? Because we're that far in front. But I do think it'll be an extremely close game, and I do think I think it'll go into that last 10 minutes, and it'll be an either or. Really, I think one error could compound it for either side. But Robert, just for the travelling Rovers fans who are heading down the M62, just give us where can people get a beer at the ground? Where can they park?
Well, there's a big car park at the stadium. Yeah, you can park at Salford City Roosters ground, which is just before the roundabout. You can Google it. I've not got the postcode on me. They've got a nice new clubhouse with where you can get beers in there. There's a big tent as well outside. It's Salford's match day experience has got better and better through the years. Paul King, the director, has really put his arm up when it comes to making the game day experiences better. I know you've got a game day experience going on as well, haven't you? Behind one of your posts, I think, haven't you? Which is exciting. So we're kind of building that at our end, and hopefully, we'll be a lot of fans come out on Friday. You'll bring a few, and we'll have a good atmosphere on at the AJ Bell, and make the best team win as long as they're in red.
Hey, Mikey, Mike, you might see Mikey's got a great kit collection there. So, but yeah, Robert, just before you go, could this be the last time that we see Rovers play at the AJ Bell Stadium?
Yeah, possibly. There's talk about Salford going to Moor Lane, which is Salford City FC's ground. It's a nice little ground. It's like it holds 5,000 people. We've spoke to the RFL, and they've kind of like given us the ideas and what they need to do to make the ground sort of pass the Super League requirements. It is like a mini Willows. Did you all come down the Willows when we played there?
Yeah,
a bit like that. A bit old school. Roofs are a bit low. Atmosphere will be fantastic, especially obviously if we only get 5,000, it will look full. So it'll be a cracking atmosphere. AJ Bell is great. It's a modern style stadium, but it is a bit too big for us, unfortunately. But we've had some good memories there. We've developed as a club there, and we're ready to go on to the next chapter, if that is Moor Lane in the next sort of 12 months.
Yeah. Well, Robert, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can catch up a bit later on in the season when Salford obviously met the return journey to Craven Park. But for now, take care, Robert, and let's hope for a cracking game on Friday night.
Brilliant. Cheers, lads.
Thanks, Robert.
Cheers.
Yeah, so very interesting, isn't it? Obviously, he's done a good job there, bigging up all the players. I wouldn't necessarily agree that some of them players are as good as what they've said, because I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how they perform on the back of two pretty bad defeats that they've suffered. But for me, I do think it is going to come down to that battle in the halves. Abdul and Lewis versus Brodie Croft and Mark Sneyd. And Mark Sneyd, Joe, he does have the ability to kick a team to death, doesn't he?
Yeah, he seems to bring his kicking game when he plays us as well, doesn't he? So I think it'll come down to our halves, so I'll play theirs. If our forwards can create the space for our halves to do the job. If the forwards don't lay that platform, then any team's going to struggle. So I think it's going to be won in the forward battle personally than the halves. But whoever's forward battle wins, the halves are going to get to play off the back of that out lane. If we give Sneyd time with a ball in hand, he will kick us to death. And like we've said previous, we spend too much time coming out of our own backfield than we do on their line. So hopefully this Friday it'll change.
Yeah, and Mikey, it is our strongest forward lineup, isn't it? You got George King, Matty Staunton, Corbin Sims, Albert Vete, Tom Garrett, Holton, Lynette, Minchella, Hadley. Who misses out for you out of all of them?
Well, it's probably easier for me to tell you what I've written down because what I've done for the forward pack is I've gone with starting props as Vete and King with Parcell. Second row, partnership of Frankie Holton and Kane Lynette with Elliot Minchella at loose. And then on my bench, I've gone for Staunton, Litton, Sims. And then I've thrown a little bit of a curveball in there of Rowan Milnes, even though obviously he's not a forward. I just feel like Tony Smith likes this fourth bench spot to be a little bit of a wild card entry where you never quite know why, or there's a reason why they're there, should I say, but we never know quite why. And I just think that, Rowan had a run out for Dewsbury last weekend, and it could just maybe spice things up a little bit if our halves are struggling.
Yeah, and he wasn't the only player who lined up for Dewsbury, was he? Because obviously Will Marr made his return, and PLT also played for Dewsbury. I think Dewsbury got a bit of a thumping, didn't they, that day? But Rowan Milnes probably scored the try of the game. Joe, is it too early to go really radical and maybe drop one of the halves to fit Rowan Milnes in?
Maybe a game or two early, I'd suggest. I think they're still trying to. You can't even say gel together, can you? Because they played together last season. I just think there's still some rust there. I think Michael Lewis has shown glimpses of his individual talent. I don't think him and Abdul linked together as well as him and Rowan Milnes did when Abdul and Rowan Milnes did when they was together in the side. So maybe give Milnes a go and see how it goes, and then you're keeping him on the toes, aren't you? You're making him play for the place, really. Yeah,
and that's one thing that we don't want players to become as comfortable, is it? And why you've got players like Rowan Milnes, and I'm sure did Abdul get dropped last season, Mikey? I'm sure. My memory might be wrong, but I'm sure Abdul got dropped and Milnes got put in, and I think that was maybe a bit of a kick up the backside for Abdul because there is a bit of sometimes complacency that can filter into players when they know that they're almost guaranteed a starting spot. But it'd be very interesting to see if Rowan Milnes does line up on the interchange bench because I suppose he could play a couple of positions if he does come on.
Yeah, Rowan Milnes, obviously, as we know, can play a couple of different positions. Jordan Abdul actually played in the centres for a game in 2020, I think, when we travelled to Catalan. I'm sure he played in the centre that day. Or if it wasn't that game, it was a different game. I'm sure he definitely played a game in the centres, did Abdul, which then obviously allowed two other halfbacks to play in that position. We've had the option of playing Abdul at loose forward, which has been something that the fans have been kind of trying to talk into existence for quite a while now. Abdul's style of play possibly suits a loose forward position, maybe more than it does starting as a standoff. Sorry. So there is different options there. Obviously, there's people have been speaking about Rowan Milnes, and people are saying that centre's a very good position for Rowan Milnes as well. So there's all sorts of different options and combinations that we could see heading into Friday's fixture.
Yeah, and Craig Esperett says he'd definitely have Garrett coming in. Garrett makes my lineup, but it'd be very interesting because we've seen obviously Garrett come in. He's performed okay. He hasn't been amazing, but I suppose what you've got to do with these players, and we've seen Frankie Holton take advantage of that. He's give them the opportunity and see what they can do. But what Frankie, what Tom Garrett definitely does is add competition for places, doesn't it? And it is going to be really interesting to see how we line up on Friday night. And like we've already said, one player who definitely isn't featuring is Brad Takairangi. Obviously, well-documented court case going on at the moment. And then he played the St Helens game. Many fans were calling whether he should have been stood down and whether he should have been playing against St Helens. Tony Smith said yesterday that he will not be featuring for Rovers again until at least the conclusion of his court case. This is what Tony Smith had to say when asked about Brad Takairangi. He said, "We as a club have decided to stand him down until his hearing. We felt we needed to do something there and recognise the situation that Brad is in and make sure we do the best by him as well. Sometimes that's by removing people from situations where they may not be able to fulfil to their best as well. Brad understands. He's not shying away from his responsibility of it. That case is scheduled for around the 31st, which is, of course, 31st this month. So he'll be stood down until the hearing is heard." And then when he was asked about what sparked the decision, Tony Smith said, "We found it was time to talk about it in the right sort of circumstance. We're very conscious of player welfare and player well-being and the role that the press can play in that as well. If too many questions are asked, we have to consider how that can make people feel and how it can influence people within the community. All those things are taken into account as to why decisions are made. There are all sorts of things that went into the decision-making of it. Some of that is pressure from the outside, but also from individuals from within who feel that it's the right thing to do. That's fine. Both Brad and I support that and support the decision. We're happy to adhere to it." And then asked when how he'd been coping mentally over the past week, Tony Smith said, "It's been tough, real tough. This is his life and it's been turned on its head through some of his own actions. We're yet to see how long and how much he pays for those bad actions. That's worrying. If he was a serial offender or somebody who does things on a regular basis, sometimes having a brain explosion, how much damage they do depends. It can be a minute's difference sometimes that can make somebody find out about it or not find out about it. Unfortunately, Brad is fairly public. Brad's is fairly public and he's doing it tough." Now, obviously, we know, what's been alleged. Brad Takairangi's admitted to it. He's obviously going to court to receive his sentence at the end of the month. Joe, was you surprised to see him line up against St Helens, and do you think he should have been stood down earlier?
Yeah, I was surprised because I think it was the day before the Saints game, was it not, his hearing, or was it on the Wednesday? I think it was the Thursday, was it not?
Yeah.
Who's going to be in the right frame of mind to go play a game of rugby the day after they've been told they could potentially be facing jail? I think again, you can't afford any passengers against a team like St Helens, and I think, judging by his stats of 4 carries and 4 tackles, that's pretty much what he was for the game. So I think he maybe should have been stood down. I know there was a lot of people on social media talking about him getting the sack. But I think the club would have known what he did as soon as, it became public he'd been arrested. The club would have known exactly the circumstances of what happened. So if they didn't sack him then, I don't think they're going to sack him now, to be honest. But I do think he should have been stood down before the Saints game.
No, and Mikey, regardless of the court case, what have you made of Brad Takairangi's performances in 2022 so far?
Yeah, he's not really got going. Obviously, he's had things on his mind. Should he have been playing? Probably not. I was surprised when I saw the lineup and I saw that he was lining up against Saints. That one, it did surprise me that he was featuring. I think his situation obviously hasn't helped, but I'd like to think that his transparency with the club has maybe helped him with the club, maybe more than anything else.
Yeah, although it does seem he was pretty much banged to rights by all accounts, by what happened. But what I would say is that it's very interesting that Tony Smith said last week that he would continue to pick Brad Takairangi until he was told otherwise that he couldn't. Obviously, someone behind the scenes, someone at the club has decided that he should be taken out the firing line, probably for his own benefit, and ultimately I think it might be for the team's benefit as well, because there's no doubt it's been probably a bit of an elephant in the room in terms of at training and within the camp, and I think it had been very interesting to see what would have happened if Brad Takairangi had been having a fantastic season and he'd been playing really well, but he hasn't, has he, Joe? And the fact he's been playing so poorly has obviously led to a lot of people say that he should have been stood down earlier than what he was. Do you think Rovers will be able to move on from this and actually that Rovers might end up coming out with this a bit better by having a new right-wing partnership?
Yeah, personally, I don't think he's warranted his place in the team based on form anyway at the moment. I think, like I said earlier, Sam Wood, from what I've seen, I know he had a mare against Wigan, but him against Castleford, it was unreal. He's got the skills to be able to fulfill that spot, and I think Frankie Alton inside him as well. I think Takairangi's very lazy, if I'm honest. I think compounded that for me. I think it was about 60 minutes in, Tommy Makinson took a tackle. There was 2 men in the tackle and he offloaded it. As he offloaded it, Takairangi came in over the top as a third man. The ball had already gone. To me, he was making the easy decision to go in as a third man because he didn't want to have to chase back. It made it look like he was trying, but to me, but maybe that, I just think he hasn't looked right. He was on his haunches in the first half. It's just, I don't know. At the minute, I don't think he's justifying his place in the team, regardless whether he's what he's done or what he hasn't. So I think it might do Rovers. I think we might be better on that right edge without him in there, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and is Sam Wood and Ethan Ryan, is that the only combination possible, Mikey, or can you see somebody else maybe lining up on that right edge?
It's definitely not the only combination. It's the combination that I would go with. I feel like that Sam Wood is possibly more built as a centre than a winger. I think the Castleford game, when he switched into second row for a little bit, some of his drives, pardon the pun, but the drive that he was going with as well was really strong. And I felt like, God, is this guy, could he play in the second row? Could we be seeing him moving more in field? So I would actually be welcoming that with open arms. The welcome addition to some pace on that right wing through Ethan Ryan. When you think of what games he has played, he scored some fantastic tries, never really let us down. I think back to the moment against Huddersfield when we got our first win in 2021, when he just grabbed that ball in the final minute to stop Huddersfield scoring in the corner. He's rarely let us down. The one thing that I would have to question a little bit is his match fitness. He has picked up the odd little injury when he's been playing. And it's going to be a case of, for him now, he's just building some consistency and hoping that he can keep these them wrists pretty solid.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the dilemma Tony Smith faces at the moment, isn't it? Do we try and sort of pack that right edge out and make us defensively strong? Obviously, bringing someone Ethan Ryan in, as obviously he can defend, but obviously he brings a lot more attacking flair to that team, and for all that attacking flair, you maybe lose a bit of defence. So it's going to be really interesting to see how we line up. And there's no doubt that Tony Smith, he likes to play a wild card every now and again, doesn't he? So it'd be really, really interesting to see how we do line up on Friday night. But I just hope with the Brad Takairangi situation, obviously, the club are protecting the player. Tony Smith's very big on that, and quite rightly so. The result of the court case, etc., the sentencing will be what it is. But I just hope the club take into account the feelings and the opinions of the fans when any decision's made, because I think we're all stakeholders in the game. I think we're all stakeholders in Hull Kingston Rovers, and whatever has happened and whatever the outcome is, it's probably left a bit of a sour taste in everybody's mouth. So hopefully we'll get some resolution to it very soon, and as a club and as a team we can move on from it, because we didn't bring it to our door. We don't want this, and the team certainly don't. So hopefully it'll be ended very soon. So I'm just going to wrap up with your predictions for the Salford game. Obviously, our good friend from Salford thinks that they're going to win. But how confident are you two? Firstly, you, John, then you, Mike, that Rovers are going to come away with a victory?
I'm going to go Rovers by 8. I think it'll be a tight game. I think, it could come down to, like I say, I think it'll be won and lost in the forward pack. But I'm going to stick my neck on the line and go for a Rovers win by 8. And you, Mikey?
Yeah, believe it or not, I was thinking Rovers by 8 as well. And I was umming and ahhing, do I say something different just to say something different? But no, I'm going to go with it because that's genuine what I thought, Rovers by 8. I did a little bit of studying this afternoon on some stats, and in the last 10 games against Salford, we've won 5, lost 5. So that tells you how close it's going to be. But the one stat that I found quite interesting was that we played 10 games at the new stadium in Salford, the AJ Bell. Won 3, lost 6, drawn 1. So it's not somewhere where we're necessarily fruitful in terms of picking up victories, but just to make it a little bit shirt related, of the 3 games that we've won, we've played in an away shirt, and we don't often play too well in an away shirt. We do struggle to pick up points in away shirts, but in 2012 we played in the away shirt and won. 2016 we played in the away shirt and won, and in 2019 in the Challenge Cup we played in the away shirt and won. And we're playing in the away shirt again this time. So fingers crossed there.
Fingers crossed as well, Mikey. And you've got any other updates from Hull KR shirts or any of the work that you're doing with the Heritage Trust at the moment?
Continuing with things on a match day, doing the Craven Street. Obviously, I'm still working with the Community Trust and doing the Heritage Evenings. We've got another Heritage Evening on the final Wednesday of this month. So looking forward to that. It's always good to listen to past stories and things from experts such as Roger Pugh, Keith Pollard and Brian Leeson. We've got a really, really good wealth of knowledge there. So if you are interested in learning more about Rovers' history and its past, it's the final Wednesday of each month in the North Stand at Craven Park.
Excellent. And of course, for those who didn't know, it was International Women's Day yesterday. And the club earlier in the week released the fixtures for the Hull KR women's side. They're going to kick off the season with a 4-game Women's League Cup against 𝐂𝐿𝐴 Raiders, Stanley, Illingworth and Oral St James, before they then take on the Salford Red Devils, newly formed women's team, in round 3, Dewsbury Moor Ladies, and then the derby, which is going to be in round 7, which I think is scheduled to be at Craven Park. So I'm sure you'll all join me in wishing the women's side the best of luck in the upcoming season. It's sure going to be a great battle for the women to see how they do, especially after getting promotion last season. And of course, who doesn't love a derby and getting bragging rights? So I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who get down to Craven Park for that game. And then, of course, Rovers have announced a ticket deal for all season ticket holders, where I think you can get 6 tickets for £1 if you remember. I saw the club had tweeted earlier this evening that there's less than 1,000 tickets available for season ticket holders. So if you've not yet taken advantage of that offer, I think everybody should have received an email about it. Check your emails, and if not, get in touch with the club, because we definitely want to pack out Craven Park for that game on April the 1st against Warrington Wolves. It's sure going to be a great night there, I'm sure. But that's a great end to the podcast, lads. Really thank you to you, Joe, for joining us. It's been a great debut. Really appreciate it. And to you, Mikey, of course. It's been a really good insight. And, of course, you had to bring it back to shirts at the end. And if it was a competition based on shirts, I'm sure Rovers would win every week. But this has been the Red Robin Podcast Weekly, of course, brought to you by 360 Chartered Accountants and Budget Ties Auto Centre. I've been Chris Johnson, joined by Joe, Mike, and, of course, our friend from Salford. Let's hope for Rovers' victory on Friday. And remember, live, love, laugh and be happy.